If you are a crazy person, go-getter that wants to get their real estate license, this video is for you. Hi, it's Maria. Welcome to the shit show. I'm a licensed realtor in New York, and I also talk about mindset on this channel, which you're definitely going to need if you're going to pursue a career in real estate. If you clicked on this video, by the end of the video, you're going to know 3 super important topics that you need to have down pat to pass your real estate exam, hopefully the first try. Now, I did already make 2 other videos that are like a complete crash course the past 2 years, but they were a little bit more New York specific. So these 3 topics are actually going to be more national exam specific. So this applies to basically everyone. I do explain things very simply on this channel, and I do not give you extra information that's really not necessary to pass the exam. If you are interested in tutoring or my study guide, my link is down below. The study guide is also more New York specific, just a heads up. And my best piece of advice to you, regardless of what state you're in, the literal best way to pass the real estate exam is study the material and then apply the knowledge with practice questions. You want to make sure that you know the material so well that you can recite it off the top of your head, but you also want to know the way it's actually going to be presented to you and make sure you can answer it the way they want. So because of that, Mary is a real estate agent representing a seller named John. During negotiations, Mary learns that the property has an undisclosed structural issue that could potentially affect its value. What should Mary do based on her fiduciary duty? A, keep the information confidential to avoid complicating the sale process. B, disclose the structural issue to John, her client, as a part of her fiduciary duty of disclosure. C, ignore the information since it's negatively impact the sale. Or D, share the information with potential buyers to negotiate a lower price without informing John. I'm gonna give you all a second to answer that. So we're gonna go with B, disclose the structural issue to John, her client, as a part of her fiduciary duty of disclosure. So regardless of what state you're in, you're going to need to know agency relationships. That is the first important topic that I wouldn't walk into the real estate exam without knowing. So again, I don't like to give people extra information. I like to stick to exactly the most likely stuff that would be asked on the exam, no matter what state you're in. So buyer's agent, you represent the buyer. Seller's agent, you represent the seller, and you do help to find the buyer. The broker is the person who is in charge of you. When you have an active real estate license, you can't use your license unless you join a brokerage. But now here's a great question. When you are working with a client, who has the main relationship to the client? Is it you or is it your broker? You do all the work, but believe it or not, it's technically the broker who has the main relationship to the client. You are the sub-agent to the client. That is a lovely, confusing test question. So if you see that, please do not say that you have the main relationship to the client, because you do not. The next fun thing that you need to know for your exam is called dual agency. In a typical real estate transaction, you have a buyer's agent, you have a seller's agent. There's 2 different people working together to make everything run smoothly. But then we have a circumstance called dual agency. So dual agency is when the buyer's agent and seller's agent becomes the same person. You're a listing agent, you have a listing, you have another buyer looking, and maybe they describe the exact house that your listing happens to be. So you bring them over and they love the house and they want to go into contract. Essentially, you're selling your own listing. Now, most agents typically shy away from this, but experienced agents actually do this on purpose because obviously they want to keep the entire commission to themselves. Now, here is the trick about dual agency that you need to keep in mind. You can only get away with dual agency if your buyer and your seller both agree to give up their rights to loyalty and disclosure. If they both decide that it's fine, they will give up loyalty and disclosure, and you're going to have them sign off on it, then you are free to move forward. You can close and you're going to be able to keep that entire commission. But they do not have to give them up. So in that case, your broker now has to call in another agent, and that's going to be called the designated agent to represent the buyer so we can have a normal transaction. And they can also have the representation that they deserve. So with that being said, let's now get into the fiduciary responsibilities. These are what we're supposed to do as a real estate agent at all times. You've probably heard the abbreviation old CAR for the fiduciary responsibilities, but this is an amazing test question. There's especially 2 that they love to test on because they get a little bit similar. So the first one is loyalty. So the agent is obligated to act in the best interest of their client above all else. This prioritizes the client's goals, negotiating on their behalf, and avoiding conflicts of interest. The next one is disclosure. So agents are required to provide all relevant and material information to their clients that could affect their decisions. This includes disclosing known property defects, market information, any conflicts of interest that the agent knows of. Confidentiality. Real estate agents must maintain the confidentiality of their clients' personal information and any discussions related to the transaction unless given explicit permission to disclose or when required by law. So there are 3 others, which are obedience, reasonable care, and accounting, but those are usually not really tested on that I've ever seen. Based off of the people that I tutor, the one that you need to have the most clear is disclosure versus confidentiality. Now, really the difference is disclosure is stuff that you have to tell the buyer. If there are property defects or anything else that would affect the buyer wanting their house or not, that is for them to decide. You can't withhold the information because you're scared that the deal is not going to go through. Whatever you know as an agent, the buyer has to know so they can make an informed decision. Confidentiality, on the other hand, is stuff that you do not need to tell the buyer. You don't give away your client's personal information, especially if it would give them an advantage if the buyer or buyer's agent knew. For example, your buyer and seller are getting a divorce and they hate each other and they would actually sell the house for maybe $20,000 less because they're in a rush to move out. You do not go and tell the buyer's agent that, because that would now give them an advantage and not be working in the best interest for your seller. The biggest one with disclosure is usually property defects. So disclosure is you have to tell them. Confidentiality is none of their business. Keep that stuff to yourself. The next topic that I would not walk into your real estate exam without knowing is mortgages. Super important topic. I do have a full video of just mortgages on my channel if you want to check it out. But first things first, if you are the one loaning the money, what is that called? If you are the one borrowing the money, what is that called? Mortgager versus mortgagee. Now, this is an amazing test question and you can't mess it up because the mortgagee is the lender. Mortgagee has 2 E's in it like lender, okay? Mortgager is the person who is borrowing. Do not get that wrong because I will come back for you if you do. Next, what is a promissory note? A promissory note is an IOU. It's literally an acknowledgement of debt, and it doesn't even have to be on a house per se. It can actually be on anything, but promissory note is an IOU. You are acknowledging that you're in debt and you have to pay it off. Next, this is something that I keep getting asked from people that I tutor, so here's the difference. We have a mortgage banker versus a mortgage broker. Now, to keep this just super simple, a mortgage banker is licensed with the state. So they originate the loans. A mortgage broker is registered with the state. So they basically do not have their own money. They bring the borrower and the lender together. So when you go to apply for a mortgage, basically they're going to take whatever amount that you're going to be needing for your house and they go and sell that on the secondary market. So if you see funny names in your exam, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Sally Mae. That is the secondary market. So they are basically getting the money for your loan from them, and then you pay it back monthly, aka your mortgage. So now we're gonna go over loan types because this is super important. So we have FHA, that is Federal Housing Administration. This operates under HUD, which is Housing Urban Development. For the purpose of the exam, if you see FHA and HUD, I need you to ingrain into your brain, it is an insured loan, a government insured loan, and it is typically for lower income people. It is to help assist you and guarantee that you can get a house, even if you don't exactly have a ton of funds for it. That doesn't mean you can't live somewhere. And if you see anything about FHA Section 8 on your exam, this helps with rent. This is rent specific. FHA Section 8, rent. Don't get it wrong. Don't say I didn't warn you. So typically the two are FHA loan and conventional loan. Conventional loan is basically just the standard loan. I definitely don't hear many questions about conventional loans because that's not really the interesting one, you know? It's FHA. And the next interesting one is a veteran's loan. So the thing that is special about a veteran's loan, it is a guaranteed loan and you can actually finance the entire thing. You can put 100% down. Veterans do not need to get a down payment. So that is a fantastic loan. So now we're gonna break down mortgages even further. Everyone knows what an interest rate is, okay? Everyone goes crazy over the interest rates, going up, going a little bit back down, going back up higher. So interest is extra money that you have to pay because you have to borrow money to buy a house. That's what interest is. But the thing with interest is there's two ways that you can have interest. You can have a fixed rate, or an APR, an annual percentage rate, or you can have a not fixed rate, which is an adjustable rate mortgage, an ARM. A fixed mortgage rate means whatever interest rate that you receive from your mortgage lender, you are locked into that rate for the entire life of the loan. And again, that's called annual percentage rate. So your interest rate is locked in for the entire life of the loan. It doesn't matter how much the interest rates go up and down. On the other hand, you then have an adjustable rate mortgage, an ARM, and that is when you don't have a fixed interest rate. So actually, it'll only be fixed for maybe 4 years, 7 years, and then your interest rate is going to adjust whatever the market is at the time. So then usually your interest rate ends up going higher, and whatever extra money you now have to pay, it'll get backed to the end of the loan. So then what does this cause? It causes amortization versus negative amortization. So amortization is you pay your principal and interest for 15 years, 30 years, whatever your mortgage is. You have a fixed interest rate, and then at the end of the mortgage, your balance is zero. You're done, you don't owe anything. But on the other hand, negative amortization is at the end of your mortgage, your balance is not zero. And it's not zero because you had an ARM, an adjustable rate mortgage. So your interest rate was not fixed, maybe being the same for 4 to 7 years and then adjusted to whatever the market was at the time. So it went higher, and whatever extra money you now had to pay ends up getting put to the back end of the loan. So when your mortgage is supposed to be up and done and paid for, you do not have a clear balance. Your balance is not zero. So now you're going to have to do something called a balloon payment, which is paying off whatever extra money you now owed because your interest rate was not fixed. So that just goes to show you that if you see negative amortization or adjustable rate mortgage or balloon payment, those are things that you need to associate in your head altogether. If you see one, you should be able to recite the other two off the top of your head. Otherwise, it shows you don't know the information well enough. Question time. A borrower opts for a mortgage with a payment option that allows them to make monthly payments below the accrued interest rate, resulting in unpaid interest being added to the loan balance. What type of mortgage is this? A, fixed rate mortgage, B, interest only mortgage, C, negative amortization mortgage, D, adjustable rate mortgage. The answer is going to be C. The answer is C because the question is specifying that there's unpaid interest being added to the balance. Adjustable rate mortgage is technically a mortgage, but that's really more focused on the interest rate not being fixed, as opposed to the actual mortgage itself, if that makes sense. So lastly, we're going to make sure that you have all these years straight, but you need to know Civil Rights Act and Fair Housing Acts. So Civil Rights Act was in 1866, and it specifically protects race, nothing else, just race. Because after Civil Rights Act, it now turns into the Fair Housing Acts. So the first Fair Housing Act that was in 1968, that now covers race, ethnicity, religion, national origin. That covers all of that. Followed by the Fair Housing Act of 1974, now sex is a protected class. And then finally, we have the Fair Housing Act of 1988 that protects familial status. You can't discriminate against someone because they have family, have children, and you can't discriminate against the mentally and physically handicapped. Now, a question I get a lot from the people that I tutor is age a protected class? Technically, it is not a protected class. Okay, so now before we get into the last bit of this topic, here is the question. In a neighborhood where the majority of residents belong to a particular ethnic group, a real estate agent approaches homeowners suggesting that the arrival of individuals from a different ethnic background will lead to a decline in property values. The agent implies that selling now before the property value decreases would be a wise decision. Which real estate practice is this scenario an example of? A, redlining, B, steering, C, blockbusting, D, predatory lending. The answer is going to be C, blockbusting. So first of all, predatory lending, I don't even know what that is. To get into what those three very important illegal practices are, steering is intentionally leading a buyer away from an area, and it usually is discriminatory based. You as a real estate agent can't assume that someone from a particular ethnicity wants to be in a neighborhood full of people with the same ethnicity. Like, that is crazy. That's what steering is. The buyer tells you where they want to live, and that's it. You do not have any input on it. Now, redlining is for the mortgage lenders. So as a mortgage lender, you can only decline a mortgage based on their current finances. What redlining is basically you see in a geographic area that a lot of homes are being foreclosed. So you decide as a mortgage lender that even though your potential buyer is in good financial standing right now, apparently you can see into the future and you decide that they're also going to foreclose in the future. So you might as well just decline the loan. You cannot do that. You can only decline a loan based on their current financial standing. You can't decide because a lot of other homes in an area are foreclosing that this person's also going to foreclose. Lastly, we have blockbusting, which is what I just described before in the question. It's basically a scare tactic used to get a listing. You say that the person's home is going to be worth less because certain people are moving in. Super, super wrong, super horrible. Basically, agents a long time ago used to say that this protected class is moving in or out of a neighborhood, so you might as well get out now to get the listing. So like I said, the best way to pass the real estate exam is to memorize the material, but then also use practice questions to apply them. So I am going to leave my prep agent link down below. I have videos on my channel explaining topic by topic, also even more in depth. I also do have my website down below. I have a full study guide, and I also do real estate tutoring. If you got anything out of this video, make sure to follow and like the video, and I will see you guys soon.